Okay, so everyone, I have found a new word. I'm not going to use the word exciting, but I'm going to use the word gracious. I'm so gracious today to have my guest with me, Sarah Lachman Wing. I'm not used to the wing part yet because when I knew Sarah, she wasn't married. So I'm getting
I
used
still
to
forget.
do you really? Well, I'm excited to have Sarah Lachman Wing with us today as our guest on Coffee Talk. But before we get started, I'm going to pray, like I always do, so the Lord can untie my tongue because, yeah, me and talking. And Lord, I just thank you today, Lord, that you have allowed me and Sarah to come back together and just to talk like we used to do. And Lord, I just pray you would guide this conversation and just help us to have a good time, relax, and learn a lot about love and a lot about the lifetime of loving. We thank you for pray. Amen. Thank you
Amen.
so much, Sarah, for coming today. But okay, so my first question always is, do you drink coffee?
Sometimes.
Okay, sometimes, and why? What do you not like about coffee?
I just grew up drinking tea more often. So from time I was 3, it was tea, and coffee was just a vacation drink.
Okay, okay,
And then as I got older and I was working outside the house, then it became okay, coffee's more available than tea, but I still have to have my morning cup of tea.
okay. What kind of tea do you drink?
Anything caffeinated, anything that's not chamomile. Those
Okay,
are my 2 criteria. Um, Sometimes I say herbal mint tea before bed, or if I have a stomach ache or something like that.
okay,
Love Earl Grey.
yes,
And
yes.
sometimes it's just your standard black tea from Lipton or Tetley.
Do you put milk in your tea?
Sometimes. If
Sometimes
I'm
you
at home, yes. If I'm making it at work, only if I have the powdered milk.
do. Okay, okay. I've never loved milk with tea except for the what do they call the matcha stuff, the matcha like the
Oh,
green.
yes.
I like it with them, but I don't never haven't liked it. So, but I was watching this movie. This is me. I'm so random. I was watching this movie, and it's about this person who went to Taiwan, and so they had this tea, like it's like a milk tea, like it's
Uh-huh.
called boba leaves or something like that. And
Oh,
so
it's so good.
and so I found it. I went to Ross and I was looking for something random. And I'm like, oh my god, I bought it. So it's like black tea and actually, so here I'm a vegan now. I've only been a vegan for 4 months, but I'm a vegan. So I knew
Okay.
I couldn't have milk in it. So but this one was vegan. It was vegan. I guess it had a coconut, something
Mm-hmm.
or whatever. But it tastes really good. I mean, it was really like black tea and whatever other stuff was in it. So I like tea. I like green tea probably the most because I just like
Mm-hmm.
how I feel with it. But the other teas, I like them, but I don't like them as much. And I like chamomile, so I want to know why not chamomile.
There's something about the taste of it. As an example, we went away for a weekend, and my husband was trying to make me tea.
Hmm.
And he pulled it, and the jar says it's whatever it is, not chamomile, because
Hmm.
he knows how much I dislike it. I'm like, there's chamomile in this. He's like, no, no, no. So he walks back over to prove to me that it's in my head, and he pulls out another packet, and it says chamomile. He's like, oh. It's something about like the herbaceousness of it. It
Yeah.
just doesn't sit well with me. Like I can drink any other tea and be okay, but something about chamomile.
Okay. That's funny because I don't like the smell of chamomile, but I like the taste of it. So I guess there's something in it. I don't know what it
Yeah.
is. Okay. All right. So tell us a little bit about yourself, Sarah. Who are you? Whatever you want to tell us.
Okay. Let's see. For years, I was defining myself by my career, and this is my 21st year teaching in the public school system. Yeah, 21. Um, until I got married, I was heavily involved in my church. And now I feel like my mission field is raising my stepchildren part time. And I'm going to show you my dog. She's cleaning herself right now, but there's my
Okay.
dog.
Hi, dog.
I'm
Oh my
never
God.
going to.
Can you turn it back again? I miss Florida so much. Turn it back. Let me see the outside again. Oh my God. Look at that. Florida people. Look at it. I'm sorry. Go back. Go back. Go back. Go back.
Yeah. Tinkerbell's my first dog. I've never had one until we got married.
Hmm.
Um, what else? I find myself becoming domesticated, and I don't know how I feel about that still.
Hmm.
Like all of a sudden, I am the one who's looking up recipes and getting excited about crock pots and instant pots, and that's not me. I was the one who was traveling every summer and making people jealous.
Yeah.
And now I'm like, I don't know how to cook anything the way I want to.
Let's find the newest organization tool or something like that. How do I organize my closet and keep my kids in line
Right?
and all that stuff, right? Sarah, I'm so excited because I actually thought of you. This topic probably is weird because I was thinking when I saw it, I said this topic seemed like it would be was for an older person.
Yeah.
But when I thought about it, it's not because you're similar to me where you got married older, which
Yes.
is not that because you're not old, but you got married older. And so really it is a different way of looking at how do you love for a lifetime when you've been single for a lot of that lifetime. And so I really should take the topic a little bit. That's kind of
Okay.
the focus I'm going to go. It's like basically, first of all, before we talk about all that, I need to know how did you meet?
At work.
Oh,
So
is he a teacher?
yeah. So remember that room that was across the hall from where you were teaching?
Yes.
It was Reheiser's room.
Uh-huh.
Okay. So for those of you who didn't know, Julie Reheiser and I and Chriselle all worked together.
Yes.
So one of his friends was working in that room. And we have another connection through my family with this man. So Cameron, my husband, was one of about 50% of new staff that year.
Mm-hmm.
And I didn't even bother learning his name until the second quarter because I wasn't sure he was going to last.
Mm-hmm.
My money was on him leaving, but the other guy left instead, the bald guy. That's how we differentiated bald guy and guy with hair.
Okay.
And we were both teaching sixth grade reading, but
Mm-hmm.
I was in charge of seventh grade reading because I was the only one on campus who had taught it and had the experience, but they weren't sure I was coming back.
Okay.
So that's how I ended up teaching only sixth grade, but mentoring seventh grade teachers.
Okay.
So second semester, our team lead for sixth grade reading was pregnant, high risk pregnancy. Everything worked out well, praise Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
And he and I just started talking casually, you know, how we shoot the breeze before our department chair comes in to run the meeting. So over the summer, we were working together, collaborating on creating a brand new class that was extremely exciting to me. It was a combination of reading, language arts, and social studies.
Mm-hmm.
And as we got to talking more and more, he says, you know, is there a chance that we could ever be more than friends and colleagues? And I said, well, I won't say no, but I'm breaking a rule because I have never dated a coworker before.
Mm-hmm.
So that was the summer when we got back, August. We went on our first date a few weeks later and got engaged July 1st.
Wow. So
Well,
that's
I was pushing 37, or yeah, I was 37, I think, when we did that, and he was 36, but there were 3 children involved
okay.
from his previous marriage. And because of that, we didn't want to wait too long. We wanted the kids to see how, you know, as 2 Christians, we committed to each other and we were going to go ahead and make this lifetime commitment.
Mm-hmm.
There's a cute picture, I think you've seen it, where the kids are holding a sign that say, will you marry us?
I saw that. Yeah. I saw
Yeah.
that.
And it really has done that. And it was hard. There are days where it's still hard, I'll be honest, where I mean, I was telling you about how I was supposed to be the one traveling every summer and all of that. And when you've got 3 kids, you can't do things like you used to. And every so often I'm kind of like, you know, I used to be able to just do these things and I don't regret it. It's not a regret thing. It's just oh yeah, that's what I used to do. But at the same time, I can't even remember how to do some of those things.
Sarah, it's funny you said that because I think I was 28 when I met Kilrain. That you remember the name? That's the name, Kilrain.
Yeah.
And so, but before then, I had traveled overseas. I had lived overseas every time I was going somewhere. And the last
Right.
time I went somewhere was right before I met Kilrain. So that's like it's like I had a whole different life. And so now
Yes.
people, when I tell them, oh yeah, I've been to Paris. Oh yeah, I've been to Italy, Rome. I've been here. They're like, when? 1996. Yeah, but it's been that long. It's like I have a whole
Right.
other life. And I know some people transition like that, but we didn't do that. I settled into this life, like your life, like where life is
Yes.
about family, about your kids and things like that. So I didn't merge those well at all. And so I think I
Yeah.
definitely miss it, but it's like
Mhm.
it seems like it's 2 different lives. Like I don't know
Yes.
how to explain it. Do you know what I mean?
Now there was a transition, and I think by the time I got involved in this, you had already moved to Texas. For a while, I was just active in my children's church ministry, and then we had a youth group for a while there. And then a dear friend, well, someone who became a dear friend joined the church, and she had a background where she had a very dynamic youth group. And so she had a vision that was much bigger than anything I anticipated or could have imagined. And she kind of brought me along with her as she implemented these things. And we ended up, my last summer single, we took 20 foster kids plus the youth of our church. And we had a small church. It was an older person's church, but we had some youth. We took 20 foster kids plus our own youth children up to Tennessee to work in the mountains where there had been a fire the year before. And there was a church dorm in Gatlinburg, a few blocks from the tourist district. So we would stay there for a couple of days. Then we went over to Cherokee, North Carolina, and camped out there. And it was such an amazing experience for me because through the youth group, I had experiences I'd never had before. But it also prepared me for being a stepmom.
Right.
There was a joke. I had a little backpack I would carry, and the joke became, okay, what's in Miss Sarah's bag? What can we stump her with? And they say, Miss Sarah, I need a Band-Aid. Gotcha. Miss Sarah, I need this. Gotcha. Miss Sarah, I need a drink. Go look in the cooler. I already packed them.
That's the one thing I remember about you for sure, that you were we're different. You're very logical. You're even though you're a reading teacher, I always think that reading teachers are more creative, but you're very like I'm talking to you now. It's like you're very organized. You're very logical. All when you work, and so I think transitioning to not just being a wife, but also coming to be a mom. I tell people the joke. I waited to have KJ for like 6 years. I pushed it.
Yeah.
I was never ready. I never wanted to grow up, so I didn't have it until I was like 34. But I didn't. But you came right into not only being a wife after being single, living your own life, then coming into being a mom, which you would have to either, to me, be very, very organized or praying a whole lot for that to work very well. So tell us how did that transition work?
It was easy in some ways because the kids were used to having a step parent. Their mom had already remarried, and so they understood a little bit of that kind of dynamic. My mother-in-law was extremely helpful. I would look at her and say, I have not done elementary, and all three kids are in elementary since, I don't know, 4 years ago. Like, I never handled these certain situations. Help me out. By the time my nieces got to this age, or my godsons got to this age, I was already engaged in something else, and I wasn't doing like the day-to-day kind of caretaking. My mom and my friends, my girlfriends who all have kids, some of whom have kids and stepkids, were all instrumental in making sure that I didn't lose my mind. And I think what helped me with that transition is that though I was now a wife and a mother, I was still in the same place I was in when I started my career. I mean, I did 3 years at a different school, but then I really grew up at Heritage. And I had that emotional support system. And so many of them had seen me grow up, whether it's because they were my teachers before, or because they saw me go from a 24-year-old to a almost 40-year-old when I got married. So having that kind of stability, I felt like it kept me grounded, and I didn't completely feel like I lost myself, because that was a fear I had going in. I understand you're transitioning, you're becoming something different, but you still have aspects of your old life. But I was still afraid to let go of that old life.
And I haven't seen you, like I said, in a while, but to me, I can still see that old Sarah. I think that's the whole bit of life you do. I mean, if you don't transition into something different, then you're dying. You know, you're more. But
Right.
Like there's still that person in there who.
Hi,
Doggy. Hi. Oh my gosh. Is it a girl or a boy?
She's a girl, and she's very territorial. Sorry, she's acting out a little bit more than usual because we actually are dog sitting for a friend. And she was just introduced to that dog and does not like having to share attention. So.
Okay. And she's probably jealous of me too, thinking, who is that person? Who is she?
Well, that, and anytime I'm on electronics, she hates it. If I'm on my laptop for work, she's right across the laptop, and she's like 10 pounds, and she'll kind of sit right on top, so I can't use it. She wants my undivided attention, like you said.
For sure. So speaking of undivided attention, how did you learn how to divide your attention between yourself and your husband? Because that's a big deal. I just like
Um,
to be by myself all the time. Like, don't bother me. But you can't do that when you're married. You can't, you know?
um, I think it helps that he knew how big a deal it was, because honestly, I hadn't really dated too much. I was one of those people who was more into a courtship model. And so after like 2 or 3 dates at the most, okay, we're not compatible. We
Next.
have very different views. Forget it, or you're an idiot. Moving
Yeah.
on. But I say it nicely to them. But I would come and say to my friends, if you were still there, I would have said to you, he's an idiot. Like, forget this. um, but he understood that I went from living alone to having all the stimulation all of a sudden.
Yeah.
And so he kind of reads my cues. Sometimes he's better at reading me than I am with my emotions, and he can see that I am getting to a point where I need some quiet time as an introvert. And so he'll say, okay, I'm going to take the kids and the dog for a walk. You just chill here. And sometimes it kind of hurts my feelings until I realize, oh, I'm getting to a point where I'm overstimulated, and he can see it. And so he's giving me that time. Now, another part of our dynamic is that we have the kids every other week. And so weeks like this one, it's just the two of us. And it gives us time to focus on our own interests. Like, he's in the other room over there playing video games and just unwinding, because we had a longer day than anticipated. And I'm here on the porch. This is kind of my sanctuary. It's a little messy, but it's my sanctuary right here.
Oh, Florida, I miss you. Sorry. Goodness. Oh my goodness. I'm gonna come visit you, Sarah, someday. I don't know when. That's a long drive.
Yeah, it is.
But anyways, okay. So then,
Yeah.
I have so many questions. I wish I had different topics. So sometimes when you get married older, and I love the courting model. I don't know if my son's gonna do that, but I really think it's a great way of protecting your heart. I think it's a great way. So when you get married at a later age, then that's also transition for your family, because they're used to being the single. I know for mine it was. It was a whole different world. So how did you navigate that?
That one was a little bit harder in some ways, because I think you remember my family on my mom's side all lived next door to each other.
I remember.
It was 5 houses of family.
I remember.
And we had gone through a lot. And like you said, I was the single one. I was one they relied on when certain things happened. I was the go-between with the doctors and whatever else. And in many ways, the caretaker for the family. So it was a transition for them to not be able to just call me and have me show up. Oddly enough, we were all kind of getting to that point together. My brother, he's 6 years younger than me, and beat me down the aisle by 6 months.
Wow.
Okay. Yeah. So he got married, and then the next month we decided to get married ourselves.
Okay.
Like, we'd check in and talk about it, but we weren't quite sure yet. About December, excuse me. And then in February when he got married, I was like, yeah, I could see this, but I didn't want to say it until I was sure, because of course there's this emotion of, am I just doing this because he's getting married and he's the baby brother? And these are certain expectations culturally that I should have already fulfilled, and all of that baggage that comes with it. So I wanted to do a gut check and pray about it and make sure before we went into it. And then the last weekend of spring break, it was the day after St. Patrick's Day. We sat down, we had the conversation where we said, okay, we're going to intentionally get engaged. And one of the hardest parts of that was not so much telling my family and all of that, but it was picking the ring and planning the wedding. We got to a point where I said, can we just go to the courthouse? Because I don't want to do this. This is not me. I am frustrated beyond belief. My parents were amazing about it, because by this time, those who I was helping to take care of had already passed away, with one exception. And she was more desperate for me to get married so there could be kids for her to dote on than anything else. And She even liked the dog. So she was thrilled for me, I think more so than anybody else. Actually though, the hardest transition was for some of my friends who had only known me as single Sarah, who only knew me as the one who would go on adventures with them. Like one weekend we went skydiving. The weekend before that we were whitewater rafting and ziplining in the Smoky Mountains. And so that person in particular had a hard time adjusting to I wasn't coming home to Deltona every couple of days, or even though I was working in Deltona, I wasn't hanging out so we could hang out together. And those who'd been my friend longer knew that it's because I'm a workaholic. I mean, you remember those days
Oh, I
with
remember
me.
that. And I was done at 3. Bye, see ya. You're still there with your little bag and working, but yeah, I remember.
Yeah, and that actually was one of the other hardest transitions I made when I got married. All of a sudden, I'm having to help with homework, and
Uh-oh. I think we lost her for a minute.
I'm having to. Yeah, you're frozen on my screen.
Oh.
Okay, I'm good now.
Okay.
On my end. Yeah, so one of the hardest things was scaling down what I do in my own classroom so that I still have something left to give my family when I come home. So they were good. My cousins were fairly good. Most of my friends circle, especially the old timers who'd known me before this phase of life where I was so involved in my church, they were all like, okay, this is Sarah, this is her normal. And those who didn't know that old version of me were the ones who were kind of hurt that it wasn't coming around again, not realizing I'm going to now have 3 kids of my own to take care of part-time. Well, stepchildren, but yeah.
I mean, I guess to me, can you really ever take care of kids part time? Even though they're gone, they're still there. It's like, it's really full time, part time, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Around 2 of the 3 of them are with me at school. So one of them comes and has lunch with me every day. And I have a filing cabinet next to my desk. Each child has their own drawer of their own goodies and anything they might need because we don't have lockers.
Oh, really?
I mean, the physical lockers are present, but they don't check them out to the students because it was a COVID transition.
Okay, yeah.
And they've kept that in there for right now, where the lockers are physically present, but they're not renting them out.
Okay.
So even when we don't have them, the kids are still with me.
Okay. Well, and that's so they go to school with you guys. Your husband still teaching the same school too?
No, he's now in elementary.
Okay.
Yeah.
So he's the soft one. He's the soft one. Okay.
Yes. He teaches kindergarten.
Whoa. Yeah. He is the soft one then. If he has patience for little kids, that's a jewel.
He is amazing.
Wow.
I don't brag on him enough. But as an example, when I introduced him to my longtime friends, the ones who went through elementary, middle, high school with me, one of the children that was present at this birthday party is autistic. And he's not normally one to gravitate to new people. He went up to my now husband, took his hand and dragged him to the playground to go play with him.
Wow.
And then I told him we were dog sitting.
Yeah.
So it's a situation where a good friend's father passed away. And she doesn't have the means right now to take care of the dog because of her living situation. She can't have another dog in there. They were having a hard time getting the dog to come out so that we could move it from the house. My husband went in there and the dog is now in our garage.
Oh my God.
And the ones who are working to get this dog out are people who do animal rescue. Yeah. So they have dubbed him the dog whisperer. And yes.
That's amazing. It's funny because I remember, and I definitely remember your personality, and to know that Cameron is so not like you. It's interesting how we really gravitate to people who are different from us, for sure. I mean, you probably remember, Cameron is definitely probably more like you. He's very logical, organized. I'm totally a creative. I am an artist. That's what I am. But I think together it's like that weird complement that helps to keep it balanced. So has there been any struggles in?
Sometimes I forget I'm married. This is more earlier on than it is now.
You've been married
Um,
for 10 years or 9 years?
no, we're going on 5.
Oh, it's only been 5. Okay, okay.
Yeah. Um, but earlier on, I would miss the things that I remember as the hallmarks and the perks of being single. Um, not having gratitude for the perks of being married instead.
That was nice, yeah.
Yeah. Um, but I think having the kids kind of reminds you of that even more, though, despite the fact that there are struggles with having the kids too. I mean, as a parent in general, um, I remember all those parent conferences where I'd watch parents and how they're so frustrated with their kid, and I was like, oh, that looks really hard.
Mhm. I'm
And
so
now,
sorry
like,
for you.
yeah, it's like, okay, I'm done. The school bell is rung. He's out my door. She's out my door. And now it's like, and they're in my car and coming home with me. But the only thing I would change, I think, is having more patience with myself, not expecting that perfection. Um, as an example, my mom comes over or we do WhatsApp video chats as I'm cooking and trying to cook Guyanese food. And I want everything to be perfect because I am that perfectionist.
Mhm.
And Cameron's there with me. And whereas he's like, okay, let's see how this turns out. And it turns out well. I fixate on what went wrong.
Mhm.
And I'm such a stickler for it has to be this way. Any little thing goes wrong, I've given up.
Mhm.
And he reminds me that it's progress, it's better, and I need to go with it. Sometimes you can't have perfection.
Yeah, that's hard, Sarah, because I think especially for perfectionists, we all are in some ways, but I think that I think like you said, something you said about we're sometimes missing the old life, but not saying being grateful for the new life, because really there's a
Yep.
lot of benefits to having someone that's always having your back, to having someone that you can depend on, someone that understands you most of the time, or at least tries to understand you,
Yes.
or even parenting, to have someone to co-parent. I realized whenever I used to leave Florida and come to visit my sister in Georgia, and Kilmer was there, I'm like, oh, well, who's going to do that? Oh, Kilmer used to do that. Now I have to do
Yeah.
this. Realizing that, take it for granted that he's helping, but when he's gone,
Mm-hmm.
I'm not there. I'm like, oh, you're the one doing that, or you're the one providing whatever this is. And I think that is partly some one of the strong that's it's part of one of them. Well, I lost my train of thought. It's part of one of the benefits of loving for a lifetime, because you get to like work all those kinks out as you go along. And even
Yes.
though I know I used to come when I met Curry, when I met him, I was like 30. I'm like, oh my gosh, I only have 20 years to be married, because I'm a planner too. And that way, but
Yeah.
really, I'm like, okay, but if it's just 20 years or 30 years, it can be a great loving time, a time of learning and just becoming not a different person, but a new person. Like kind of
Yeah.
emulating who you are together. So if you had advice to someone who was getting married later in life, what advice would you give them?
Um, Nurture your relationships from before
Mm,
and help them to understand that sometimes you're not going to be as available as you used to be.
mm,
Um, like I said, the majority of the people who love and support me already knew that
mhm,
and expected it, especially since I left this town that we all lived in. Now live about 40 minutes away. Um, but I also, looking back, did neglect that friend who took it personally and didn't understand the full scope of what I was struggling with. Um, for anyone who isn't aware, I went from teaching this elective to I was all of a sudden teaching language arts.
mhm.
I was the contact person for my grade level and things like that. I planned a wedding in 4 months, and then I moved 40 minutes away, and I was learning how to be a wife, stepmom, teach language arts for the first time ever officially in our first year of marriage.
Wow.
And so looking back, like that summer, I was in a recovery mode,
Mhm,
and I didn't reach out enough to some of the people who had supported me through the times leading up to our marriage.
mhm,
And we're mending fences. It's taking time, of course,
mhm.
but we're mending fences.
That's such good advice, and you're speaking to me. You're preaching to the choir right now, because sometimes you can get in your own little bubble. We've
Yeah.
been married for, I guess this year is going to be 19 or 20 years. But
That's right.
but yes, I know. I can't believe it. It's been that long. We finally like each other now. It
We
really,
were in grad
really
school
good.
when that happened. I
I
remember.
remember. So no, it's I can't believe it. That's why I'm looking at you. I'm thinking the time really goes quickly. Like you can sometimes you can leave people behind because you start this new life and you think, well, why are you not calling me anymore? Or how come you
Yes.
don't come over? Because you're not inviting them into. And that's part of definitely one of my struggles. I've had to learn how to invite everyone into my new life and realizing that they have to learn that I'm different and there's a new situation, but I have to also, like you said, reach back and say, hey, I'm still here. And
Yes.
can you like TJ? I don't know if you know who that is. He says like you make the transition with they make the transition with you. No, you don't leave them behind. So they're just
Hmm.
they're really good friends or even family because it was hard for my family too because I was always they call me Shelly. I was Shelly. I was very introverted, free spirit.
Hmm.
But then they get married, I became a different person, sort of. And so they had to
Yeah.
do this turn up with me. Of course, family does it. They family's family, right? But I think for
Hmm.
as you're talking about, it's reminding me again, hey, just look back and say, you were worth it. So let me try to help you make a turn with me and that
Yes.
turn together and just have a new chapter. I think that's beautiful, Sarah. Sarah, you said something about Guyanese cooking. Tell our people what is that?
Okay. So, it's heavily influenced by Indian culture, specifically South Indian and some extent East Indian culture. And then you also have African influences from the indentured servants of India, the African slaves that were brought over to South America. We also have some Chinese influence from the Chinese migrant workers that were brought over, some Portuguese influence from way back when the Portuguese came and settled that area, and of course some English and Native American influences to the Arawaks and the Caribs that were there, the Amerindians. So when people look at me, where I live, they aren't as familiar with the Caribbean and that history of indentured servitude, etc. So I just say I'm Indian. And then later, once I get to know them, if I feel comfortable enough, then I explain the rest of it to them. And they get very confused. I'm like, I understand. I do go in Indian restaurants and we have some of the same flavors, but there's so many more things that we have that are different than what we have in common.
Mm-hmm.
So our cuisine is more related to Jamaican cuisine. If anyone's ever had Trinidadian cuisine, um, not exactly the same, but very similar because of the similar roots.
Right. Well, that makes sense to me. 'Cause it's like someone calling Africa. Africa's a continent. There's different
Hmm.
countries in Africa. So if you say, well, what part of Africa did you come from? You're going to have different cultural people. So it definitely makes sense. And I actually forgotten the Guyanese part of, I had forgotten that part. I didn't remember that part. So when you said it, I'm like, oh yeah, I forgot about that, about Sarah. And so are there any vegan recipes in that you know? And
Yes, I'd have to go back and look, but definitely because with the Hindu influences, you have a lot of very strict vegetarians, and especially on the holy days, they have to eat an even stricter diet. So there should be some vegan recipes in there. Let me hook up with my Hindu side of the family and get some of that for you, because if you've been on my Facebook page, you've seen a bunch of them do communicate with me.
I have, no, I really want to because I'm really, like I said, I am I'm committed to this vegan thing. Not really it's not for weight. It's really just because I feel better. And so
Yeah,
I really but I like all kinds of food, so I don't want to just eat, salad and bread. So
right.
I like venture out to different things. But okay, so this is gonna be my last question.
Okay.
If loving for life can you describe loving for a lifetime as a through the eyes of a teacher. Think about a teacher, and if you're explaining loving for a lifetime, how would you explain that? In 5 words, summarize.
Okay. Okay. Carrying the entire school year.
Oh, only
So
she can do that.
if you imagine that the school year is a version of your lifetime. When you come in at the beginning, it's like that honeymoon period when we're setting the rules and the expectations and we're doing the fun things to bond. And then sometimes in the middle of the year, we've forgotten to do all those fun things and it starts to fall apart. And you got to do a gut check. And sometimes, like, you come back from those breaks in January and we have to reteach things. And you got to remember, and I'm guilty of this, you got to remember to to bring some more fun back in, because you get into that routine and all the things that must get done, the laundry, feeding the kids, cleaning the yard, washing the tub, whatever else, and we forget to nurture those relationships.
Sarah, that was, as a kid said, drop the mic, Sarah. Drop the mic. You got it. Sarah, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much for spending your evening in Florida talking to me about Loving for a Lifetime. We'll see you guys next time. Thank you so much.